right, y'all. Here's where things get interesting. Hollywood actress Hayden Panettiere spoke out about what she claimed was happening behind the scenes, and then her situation took a serious turn.
It was like this dark, looming cloud, over my head going, what does she mean by I owe her? What form of payment is she expecting?
Two of you. It's complicated, the relationship with your mom.
When your mother is chosen to take the 8-month-old to the audition rooms, into those audition rooms, and it went from there and progressed into 50 commercials by the time I was 5. I was on a soap opera by 4 years old, and it said it never stopped, and it was every moment on set. I didn't care about anybody else's opinion but my mom's, because I knew that if she was unhappy with my performance in any way, that the rest of the day was going to be ruined.
Yes.
It was going to be a very bad day.
By the time Hayden reached her teenage years, she had already appeared in more than 10 films, including Remember the Titans, A Bug's Life, and Bring It On. I gotta stop. But as Hayden grew older and stepped further into adulthood, she was forced to navigate the darker side of becoming famous. In a more recent interview, Hayden claimed that her handler pressured her into doing something involving a Hollywood executive.
I mean, the fact that I was 18, even though I'd lived such a huge life and I thought I was so mature at 18, scientifically, our frontal lobes don't develop until we're, 26. So even though I felt like I could make healthy decisions, safe decisions, I wasn't capable of being fully aware of what was going on around me. And it wasn't until I found myself in predicaments that I realized, my perspective completely shifted, and I realized that I was in danger. But by the time I'd realized I was in danger, I was quite literally out to sea. I was shocked. It took me by surprise, and it was led by somebody that I had grown to trust and see as a protector and somebody who had my back. And to be walked down the stairs, and it was as like a surprise, presented as though it was like a surprise. And it was this very small room, and she physically put me in the bed next to this undressed man who was very famous and had his hands like this, like this was just, an average day for him. And this is something that happens all the time. And I waited for her to leave. And I mean, that lion in me, that fire in me, that my hair stood on end, and I became ferocious. I was like, this is not happening. But I had nowhere to hide. And I bolted, and I hid wherever I could think of to hide on a boat. There was no jumping off and swimming away, and there was nobody who was going to. I realized that there was nobody who was going to be empathetic to my situation, that this was nothing new to them.
By the time Hayden was 19, her frustration with Hollywood had grown enough that she decided it was time to cut ties with the industry. She even dismissed her mother, who had been managing her career at the time. But then she received some unexpected news that changed the situation.
19, I finally got the guts to split from her as business-wise, because I desperately wanted a relationship with her, desperately wanted her to just be my mom. And so she came into my trailer during lunch when we were filming Heroes, and I said to her, I don't want us to work together anymore. I just want you to be my mom. But I also wasn't expecting the reaction that I got, which was, you owe me. And that's all she said. And she walked out. And part of me was like, oh, I'm relieved that it was short, like ripped the Band-Aid off. But then it was like this dark looming cloud, over my head going, what does she mean by I owe her?
Global faces for like a decade of Neutrogena. She was talking about, she's one of the most vocal celebrities who talks about postpartum depression because she had like a really severe case of it. And she had literally been with the brand for 10 years and they fired her because of that.
And I heard they're getting dragged.
As they should. And you know what? Your wipes are trash too.
Yeah, I use Real now. I just want to say I use Real every night, and I bought new wipes, and I haven't even opened them.
Once Hayden stepped away from Hollywood, the opportunities that had previously been available to her began disappearing, effectively shutting the door on her career options.
He was my only sibling, and he was my younger sibling, and it was my job to protect him. And when I lost him, I felt like I lost half of my soul. I remember saying to somebody, and it hadn't even been a year, and I was like, don't ever expect me to get over the loss of him, because no matter how many years go by, he will always be beside me, and it will always be, I will always be heartbroken about it. I will never be able to get over it.
Hayden Panettiere would eventually encounter another painful side of the entertainment industry when her brother, Jansen Panettiere, passed away. Some people later connected his death to claims that he had that thing in his arm, but the exact circumstances should not be assumed or presented as fact without reliable evidence.
16, one of the people that I was working with in my inner circle introduced me for the first time to what she called happy pills. And I had no idea what they were, but I know that when I was given one and I was sent down a red carpet, I was like lively and like totally down to answer the questions and a chatterbox.
What did you come to learn those happy pills were?
I think they were a form of I was completely unknowledgeable about drugs and that kind of thing. I did grow up around people that I felt like, I didn't realize till later, but I felt like used alcohol as medicine.
She would later sit down with Bill for an interview and describe how, in her account, her life began spiraling because of the influence of her handler. She claimed that she was given a substance referred to as happy pills, which she said eventually left her dependent on them.
When was the last time you talked to Hayden, and what was that conversation like?
I talked to her yesterday.
Were you guys talking about the book, or what was the conversation?
The conversation was about the book, and she was, of course, she's worried about it. It's her first book, and, who wouldn't be nervous about it? But, the only thing I said to her, I was like, look, dude, you got one of the craziest stories I've ever heard in my life, and when people read it, gonna be a hit.
Destiny, as you mentioned, she was found at the Judson Mill Lofts. It's an apartment complex on Easley Bridge Road here in Greenville. Authorities say they were initially called because of an unresponsive female that was later identified as Panettiere. This happened just before 2 o'clock yesterday. Authorities telling us right now that medical assistance was provided when they arrived, but Panettiere was pronounced dead at the complex.